It was a warm spring evening when Aaliyah Johnson left school, her backpack slung over her shoulder and a small notebook peeking out from the top. The sun was slowly setting, casting a golden glow over the streets of her neighborhood. Birds chirped in the distance, and the faint hum of cars passing by filled the air. Aaliyah, a 14-year-old girl with a bright mind and a gentle spirit, was quietly excited about the weekend. She had planned to meet her best friend at the park after finishing her homework, and she hummed a soft tune as she walked down the familiar sidewalks of her neighborhood. Aaliyah's life was like that of many teenagers, filled with schoolwork, dreams, and the small joys of everyday life. She loved reading stories about history and science, and she often dreamed of becoming a teacher so she could help other children discover the world through books. Her mother, Mrs. Johnson, worked long hours at a local hospital, and Aaliyah often took care of her younger brother, making sure he completed his homework and stayed out of trouble. Despite the responsibilities she carried at home, Aaliyah remained cheerful and kind-hearted, always ready to help a friend in need. On this particular evening, Aaliyah's walk home took her through a street that was usually quiet. She enjoyed these moments alone, reflecting on her day, thinking about the lessons she had learned in school, and imagining the adventures she might have in the future. The gentle breeze brushed against her face, carrying the scent of fresh flowers from a nearby garden. Everything seemed peaceful, almost perfect. Little did she know that this ordinary evening was about to change her life forever. Ahead, a police car was parked near the corner of the street. Its lights flashed briefly, catching the attention of pedestrians and drivers alike. Aaliyah had seen police officers around her neighborhood before, sometimes stopping cars or helping people in need. She had always felt a mix of curiosity and caution toward them. After all, she had been taught to respect authority but also to stay safe. As she approached, she noticed two officers stepping out of the vehicle. One of them, Officer Daniel Mercer, was a man in his late 30s, tall and imposing, with a uniform that made him appear commanding. His partner, a younger officer, followed quietly behind him. There was nothing unusual at first glance, just another night shift in the city, but soon, everything would feel very different to Aaliyah. As she walked past, Officer Mercer called out, asking her to stop. Aaliyah froze for a moment, unsure why she was being addressed. She raised her hand slightly, a gesture of respect, and replied politely, "Yes, officer." The tone in her voice was calm and cooperative. She had learned from school and her family that speaking respectfully to authority figures was important. Yet, the officer's expression didn't soften. Instead, his face remained stern, his eyes fixed on her as if he were assessing something beyond the situation at hand. The officer approached her slowly, each step deliberate. Aaliyah felt a sudden tension in her chest. Her heart started to beat faster, not out of fear of making a mistake but because she sensed that this encounter would not be ordinary. Officer Mercer asked for her identification and questioned her about her activities earlier in the day. Aaliyah explained politely where she had been and why she was out walking, emphasizing that she had done nothing wrong. She answered every question carefully, hoping that cooperation would make the situation resolve quickly. Still, the officer seemed dissatisfied. Something in his demeanor suggested that he wasn't listening to her words but rather looking for a reason to assert control. Before she could fully understand what was happening, the officer instructed her to place her hands behind her back. Aaliyah obeyed immediately, trying to stay calm. The officer gently but firmly put handcuffs on her wrists. Aaliyah felt a mix of confusion and worry. She had never been in such a situation before. She looked up at the officer, trying to meet his eyes, silently asking why this was happening to her. Her mind raced through questions, trying to understand what she might have done to deserve this treatment, but she found no answers. The world around her seemed to slow down. The sounds of the street, the birds, the cars, even the distant laughter of children faded into the background. All that remained was the tension between her and the officer who now held her in his custody. Despite being handcuffed, Aaliyah remained composed. She didn't resist or argue. She spoke softly, trying to explain herself, hoping that reason would reach the officer. "I promise I haven't done anything wrong," she said. "Please, you can check with my school or my parents." But her words seemed to fall on deaf ears. Officer Mercer's expression didn't change, and his movements grew more forceful. There was a sense of impatience in the way he spoke, a lack of understanding for the fear and vulnerability of a young girl standing before him. In those moments, Aaliyah felt a profound sense of betrayal. She had always been taught that police officers were there to protect and serve the community. They were supposed to help people feel safe, not cause fear. But now, as she stood on the pavement with the weight of the handcuffs on her wrists, she realized that the trust she had placed in the system was fragile. She was just a teenager, yet she was suddenly thrust into a situation that felt unfair, confusing, and frightening. She tried to take deep breaths, focusing on staying calm, but every movement of the officer reminded her that she was not free to leave. Meanwhile, a few passers-by noticed the interaction. Some stopped to watch, their expressions a mix of curiosity and concern. Among them was a delivery driver, finishing his evening route. He observed the scene quietly at first, but as he saw the officer's stern behavior and Aaliyah's small, trembling frame, his concern grew. He kept his distance, unsure whether he should intervene, yet he sensed that something was not right. He instinctively reached for his phone, thinking that capturing the moment might provide a record of what was happening. Little did he know that his action would later become crucial in seeking justice for Aaliyah. Aaliyah's thoughts wandered as she tried to understand the situation. She remembered her mother's advice about staying calm in stressful situations and hoped that following those words would protect her. She wondered how such a misunderstanding could escalate so quickly and why someone tasked with ensuring safety seemed to have lost sight of their duty. Each second felt elongated, each instruction from the officer carrying weight beyond its words. Her stomach churned with worry, but her mind remained sharp, thinking of ways to explain, justify, and de-escalate the situation. As the interaction continued, Aaliyah realized that she needed to stay composed for her own safety. She remembered the lessons from school about communication and conflict resolution, and she tried to speak respectfully yet firmly. "Please, officer, I'm just going home," she said. "I haven't done anything wrong. You can call my parents if you need to verify." Her voice was steady, despite the fear that bubbled beneath the surface. She hoped that her honesty and politeness would be enough to prevent the situation from worsening. The officer, however, seemed determined to maintain control. Every movement, every word, carried a sense of authority and impatience. Aaliyah noticed the tension in his jaw, the way his eyes darted around, and the firmness in his stance. She realized that reason alone might not be enough. Still, she continued to speak gently, hoping that her composure would eventually be recognized and that the situation could end peacefully. Time felt distorted. What should have been a brief encounter stretched on for several tense minutes. Passers-by whispered among themselves, some expressing sympathy for the young girl, others debating the officer's actions. The delivery driver's phone captured the entire exchange, recording the expressions, gestures, and words that would later become critical evidence. In that moment, Aaliyah could not have imagined that a simple walk home would lead to such a significant event, one that would resonate far beyond the streets she knew so well. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity to Aaliyah, she was guided toward the police car. Her mind was filled with questions, fear, and a deep sense of injustice. She looked around at the neighborhood she had walked countless times, noticing familiar faces and familiar sights, and wondered why this ordinary evening had turned into something so frightening and bewildering. She clutched her backpack tightly, holding onto a sense of normalcy in a world that suddenly felt unpredictable and hostile. Even as she was led to the vehicle, Aaliyah maintained her composure. She thought of her family, her friends, and her dreams. She reminded herself that she was more than this moment, that she had a future filled with possibilities, and that the truth would eventually come to light. She did not fully understand what the future held, but she resolved to stay strong, knowing that her courage in that moment was the first step towards standing up for herself and others. As the officer closed the door of the police car and the engine started, the delivery driver continued filming, capturing every detail. The video showed Aaliyah's calmness despite the fear in her eyes, her polite words despite the stress of the situation, and the officer's authoritative presence. This recording, innocent in intent at first, would later become a powerful testimony, revealing not just inside the police car, Aaliyah sat quietly, her hands still handcuffed in front of her. The seat belt clicked as she fastened it, trying to steady herself. She could hear the faint hum of the engine and the occasional siren in the distance. Every sound felt amplified in her mind, each one reminding her that she was not in control. She took a deep breath, attempting to calm the storm of fear and confusion swirling inside her. The night, which had begun with the soft glow of a setting sun, now felt heavy and oppressive, filled with uncertainty. Officer Mercer sat in the driver's seat, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. He glanced at Aaliyah only briefly before returning his gaze to the road. There was no warmth in his eyes, no hint of understanding. Aaliyah watched him carefully, trying to read any signal that might indicate how the situation would unfold. She noticed the firmness of his jaw and the slight tension in his shoulders. These were signs she had seen before in adults when they were angry or frustrated. She felt a surge of anxiety but reminded herself to remain composed. She knew that staying calm was her best defense in a situation that seemed unfair and frightening. The car moved through the streets, passing familiar shops, street lights, and houses. Aaliyah recognized the corner bakery she often visited after school and the small park where she played with her younger brother on weekends. Everything looked the same, yet the world felt different now. She had walked these streets countless times without fear, but tonight they seemed foreign and unpredictable. Each passing building, each streetlight, reminded her of the ordinary life she had before this moment, a life that now felt distant and fragile. Aaliyah tried to focus on her breathing, taking slow, deep breaths to steady herself. She remembered her mother's voice from earlier that day, "Always stay calm, Aaliyah. Even when the world seems unfair, your calmness can protect you." She clung to that advice like a lifeline. She knew she had done nothing wrong, yet the weight of the handcuffs on her wrists was a constant reminder that she was being treated differently. She wondered if the officer truly saw her as a person, or if he only saw her as someone to control. This thought made her chest tighten, and a quiet sadness settled over her. The silence in the car was broken only by the soft hum of the engine and the occasional turn of the steering wheel. Aaliyah's mind raced with questions. Why was she being treated this way? What would happen next? Would someone believe her if she explained everything? She wished she could call her mother, tell her what was happening, and feel the comfort of her voice. But she knew that reaching for her phone was not an option. She was trapped in a situation that felt both unfair and overwhelming. As they drove, Officer Mercer occasionally spoke, his tone firm and commanding. He asked Aaliyah questions about her activities, her school, and her family. Aaliyah answered each question calmly and honestly, providing the information he requested. She explained where she had been after school, the homework she had completed, and the friends she had met briefly in the park. Her words were clear and respectful, yet they seemed to have little effect on the officer. He listened without empathy, as if her answers were irrelevant to the assumptions he had already made. Aaliyah noticed that the younger officer in the car remained silent. He avoided making eye contact with her, focusing instead on the dashboard and the passing streets. There was a sense of hesitation in his movements, a quiet awareness that something was not right. Aaliyah could not hear his thoughts, but she sensed that he might have been questioning the situation internally. Still, no words were spoken, and the tension in the car remained thick and unbroken. As the ride continued, Aaliyah's thoughts turned inward. She remembered her life before this night, the laughter of her friends in school, the smell of her mother's cooking in the kitchen, the warmth of her younger brother's hug when she returned home. She realized how small and fragile these moments could feel when compared to the harshness of the outside world. She thought about fairness, justice, and the idea that people should be treated with respect and dignity. The contrast between her memories and her current reality made her heart ache, but it also strengthened her resolve. She knew she had to stay strong, to protect herself with patience and calmness. Somewhere along the way, the delivery driver who had filmed the earlier incident appeared behind the police car, keeping a careful distance. He drove slowly, making sure not to interfere but remaining close enough to continue recording. He could not ignore what he had witnessed earlier. Something about the way Aaliyah had been treated did not feel right. He knew that the video could serve as a record of the event, something that might help her if the situation escalated. He thought about the responsibility he carried, realizing that by simply observing and documenting, he could make a difference. Back in the car, Aaliyah noticed that the handcuffs were beginning to feel tight. Her wrists tingled from the restricted movement, and she adjusted slightly, trying to relieve the discomfort without drawing negative attention. The physical discomfort was minor compared to the emotional weight she carried, but it served as a reminder that she was not free. Each movement, each gesture, had to be calculated and careful. She felt a mix of frustration and determination, knowing that she could not change the circumstances alone but that her behavior could influence what happened next. The journey continued, taking them through different neighborhoods, some familiar and some unknown to Aaliyah. She observed the passing buildings, the glow of streetlights reflecting off windows, and the occasional pedestrian hurrying along the sidewalk. Everything seemed normal on the surface, yet the situation inside the car was anything but ordinary. Aaliyah realized that the world could feel both safe and unsafe at the same time, depending on who held the power and how it was used. This realization was sobering, yet it also sparked a quiet determination within her. She knew that she would need to tell her story, to ensure that others could understand what had happened and why it was important. After some time, the car arrived at the police station. The building loomed ahead, illuminated by bright lights that made the walls gleam in the night. Aaliyah's stomach tightened as the vehicle slowed and came to a stop. She looked out the window, taking in the sight of the station and the officers moving inside. The sense of uncertainty was overwhelming. She did not know what awaited her inside, whether she would be questioned further, whether someone would believe her, or whether she would face consequences for something she had not done. The unknown weighed heavily on her, yet she reminded herself to remain calm and composed. Officer Mercer opened the car door, signaling for Aaliyah to step out. She obeyed quietly, her hands still cuffed, and followed his instructions carefully. Each step toward the station felt deliberate and slow, as if the world around her had become a stage where every movement mattered. She focused on her breathing, counting each inhale and exhale, grounding herself in the present moment. She reminded herself that staying composed was not just about safety, it was about dignity, about refusing to let fear control her actions. Inside the station, Aaliyah was guided to a small, sterile room. The walls were plain, and the fluorescent lights cast a harsh glow that made the space feel cold and impersonal. She was asked to sit at a table while the officers prepared paperwork and gathered information. Aaliyah complied without complaint, maintaining her calm demeanor. She noticed the younger officer watching her quietly, his expression neutral but attentive. She sensed that he might be reflecting on the events that had unfolded, though he said nothing. The tension in the room was palpable, yet Aaliyah remained composed, drawing on her inner strength and the lessons she had learned from her family and school. As the questioning began, Aaliyah spoke clearly and honestly. She described her day, her plans, and her actions, emphasizing that she had done nothing wrong. She answered every question with patience, even when the tone of some questions suggested skepticism. She remained respectful, choosing her words carefully, knowing that her demeanor could influence how she was perceived. Her calmness, combined with the clarity of her answers, began to create a subtle shift in the room. The younger officer nodded occasionally, and even Officer Mercer paused, seemingly reconsidering some assumptions he had made earlier. Throughout this part of the evening, Aaliyah's mind remained sharp. She thought about the people who cared for her, her mother, her brother, her friends, and the community around her. She imagined telling her story, making sure that the truth was heard, and ensuring that others could learn from her experience. She knew that the path ahead would not be easy, but she also knew that courage and honesty were her greatest allies. Even in a situation that felt unfair and frightening, she remained determined to maintain her dignity and integrity. The video recorded earlier by the delivery driver became a silent presence in Aaliyah's thoughts. She had not known that it existed, but she sensed that it could play a role in clarifying the truth. The idea that someone had witnessed her experience, that someone had taken the time to document what was happening, gave her a quiet sense of hope. She realized that while the world could sometimes feel unjust, there were people willing to stand up for what was right, even in small ways. This realization strengthened her resolve and reminded her that she was not alone. In the next morning, Aaliyah woke in her room, sunlight streaming through the curtains, painting soft patterns on the floor. The world outside seemed calm and ordinary, yet she could not shake the memory of the previous night. The handcuffs, the car ride, the questioning, all of it lingered in her mind like a shadow. She sat on her bed, her hands folded, thinking about everything that had happened. Despite her fear and confusion, she felt a sense of determination rising inside her. She knew that the events of last night were not her fault, and she wanted to make sure her story was heard. Her mother, sensing her daughter's unease, came into the room quietly. She knelt beside Aaliyah, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "I know it was scary, baby," she said softly. "But you stayed calm, and you did everything right. We will make sure justice is done." Aaliyah nodded, feeling warmth spread through her chest. Her mother's presence reminded her that she was not alone, that someone believed in her, and that gave her courage to face what was coming next. Downstairs, the family discussed what needed to be done. Her mother had already contacted a lawyer who specialized in civil rights cases. They talked about the importance of reporting everything that had happened, including the details of Officer Mercer's behavior and the way he had treated Aaliyah. They also mentioned the video footage from the delivery driver, which could serve as crucial evidence. Aaliyah listened carefully, absorbing every word. She realized that this was more than just a personal experience. It was a situation where the truth needed to be recognized, and where standing up could help prevent such incidents in the future. At school the next day, Aaliyah felt a mix of nervousness and resolve. Walking through the familiar hallways, she noticed the usual chatter of students, the sounds of lockers opening and closing, and the teachers moving between classrooms. Everything looked normal, but she carried the memory of the incident with her like a quiet weight. She knew that returning to her routine was important, both for her own sense of normalcy and to show that she would not be intimidated by fear. Her best friend, Leela, ran up to her with a bright smile. "Hey, Aaliyah. How are you? I heard about what happened. Are you okay?" Aaliyah smiled faintly, appreciating her friend's concern. She nodded, answering honestly, "It was scary, but I'm okay. My mom is helping me, and we're going to make sure everything is handled." Leela squeezed her hand, silently showing support. That simple gesture reminded Aaliyah that even in difficult times, friendship and solidarity could be powerful sources of strength. During the day, Aaliyah noticed that some students whispered and glanced at her. She could feel their curiosity, and some even stared. At first, she felt self-conscious, wondering if they blamed her or if they were judging her. But then she remembered her mother's words, staying calm and composed was her best defense. She walked through the halls with her head held high, answering questions politely when asked, and refusing to let fear dictate her actions. She realized that her dignity and integrity mattered more than what anyone else thought. Meanwhile, news about the incident began to spread through social media and local news channels. The video from the delivery driver was shared carefully, showing the unfair treatment Aaliyah had experienced. People reacted with outrage, demanding accountability and justice. Many expressed support for Aaliyah, recognizing that no one should be treated unfairly because of their appearance or background. As she saw these responses, Aaliyah felt a mix of relief and hope. She knew that by standing up and allowing her story to be told, she could help create change, even in small ways. The lawyer met with Aaliyah and her family in their living room. He explained the legal process, the steps involved, and the possible outcomes. He reassured them that the evidence was strong, especially with the video footage and witness testimonies. "This is a serious matter," he said. "But you have done everything right. Remaining calm, cooperating, and documenting everything will help us present a strong case." Aaliyah listened attentively, feeling a sense of empowerment. She realized that knowledge and preparation could help turn a frightening situation into an opportunity to seek justice. Over the next few days, Aaliyah was called to give a formal statement at the police department. She entered the building with a calm determination, her mother accompanying her. The hallways seemed intimidating at first, but she focused on her breathing and reminded herself of the importance of speaking the truth. The officers present were professional, taking notes and asking questions respectfully. Aaliyah answered each question carefully, describing the events clearly and honestly. She mentioned the handcuffs, the questioning, and the way Officer Mercer had treated her. Her clarity and composure impressed the lawyers and officials, reinforcing that she was credible and responsible. Outside, the media continued to cover the story cautiously. Reporters respected the family's privacy while emphasizing the seriousness of the incident. Public opinion began to shift, with more people advocating for accountability and systemic change. Community leaders held meetings and discussions about police conduct and racial bias, acknowledging that incidents like this could not be ignored. Aaliyah followed the coverage carefully, understanding that her experience was sparking broader conversations about fairness, equality, and justice. At home, the family prepared for the upcoming court proceedings. They discussed what to expect, practiced answers to possible questions, and focused on self-care to manage stress. Aaliyah spent time with her younger brother, helping him with homework and playing small games to keep their routine as normal as possible. These moments reminded her that life continued outside of the incident, and that maintaining balance and support was essential. She also journaled her feelings, writing down everything she remembered about the incident, her emotions, and her hopes for the future. This helped her organize her thoughts and feel more in control of the situation. The lawyer explained the importance of patience during the legal process. Court dates, filings, and hearings would take time, and outcomes were not immediate. Aaliyah understood that justice required persistence and resilience. She found comfort in knowing that her voice mattered, and that speaking the truth could make a difference. Her mother emphasized that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. These words stayed with her, giving her strength during moments of doubt. One afternoon, while reviewing the video evidence with the lawyer, Aaliyah noticed details she had not remembered at the moment: small expressions on Officer Mercer's face, the reactions of the other officer in the car, and the timing of certain actions. Seeing these details helped her understand the full picture and reinforced the importance of her testimony. She realized that memory, attention, and honesty were all powerful tools in seeking justice. She felt proud of herself for staying calm and observing carefully, even under pressure. As the days passed, the community's support became more visible. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers reached out with messages of encouragement. Local organizations offered assistance, guidance, and solidarity. Aaliyah felt a sense of connection and empowerment, realizing that her experience had sparked awareness and action. She understood that while the incident was deeply personal, it had larger implications for fairness and equality in society. Through it all, Aaliyah remained focused on what she could control: her actions, her words, and her emotions. She continued to attend school, spend time with her family, and participate in normal activities, refusing to let fear dominate her life. She knew that resilience was not about ignoring pain or fear, but about facing challenges with courage and integrity. Each step she took reinforced her sense of self-worth and determination. Finally, the day of the preliminary hearing arrived. Aaliyah entered the courtroom with her mother by her side, dressed neatly and carrying herself with quiet confidence. The courtroom was formal and imposing, but she focused on her breathing and reminded herself of the truth. The lawyers presented evidence, including the video and witness statements. Aaliyah's testimony was clear and composed, detailing everything that had happened without exaggeration or emotion-driven distortion. The judge and jury listened carefully, taking notes and asking clarifying questions. By the end of the hearing, Aaliyah felt a mix of relief and anticipation. She had faced the courtroom, spoken her truth, and remained composed under pressure. Her family hugged her outside, proud of her courage and resilience. She realized that even though the road ahead would be long, she had already achieved something significant. She had stood up for herself and demanded fairness. The experience, though difficult, had strengthened her sense of justice, empathy, and determination. In the days that followed, Aaliyah continued her routine, balancing school, family, and the legal process. She remained aware of the community support, the growing attention on the case, and the importance of remaining composed. Each day reinforced her belief in the power of truth, honesty, and courage. She knew that the road ahead would be challenging, but she also knew that she had the strength to navigate it. The events of the past days had changed her, but they had also empowered her, showing that even in moments of fear and uncertainty, one could act with dignity, resilience, and purpose. The courtroom was busy that morning, filled with people who had come to witness the hearing. Aaliyah and her family arrived early, finding their seats near the front. The atmosphere was tense but controlled, with lawyers speaking quietly among themselves and court officials moving purposefully. Aaliyah's heart beat a little faster, but she focused on keeping her breathing steady. She remembered the advice her mother had given her: stay calm, speak the truth, and remember, courage is your shield. These words echoed in her mind, giving her a sense of strength. Officer Mercer entered the courtroom, flanked by two officers. He looked confident, wearing a uniform that carried authority, yet his expression was tense. Aaliyah studied him for a brief moment, noticing the small signs of nervousness hidden beneath his composed exterior. She realized that today was the day where everything would come to light, where the truth she had lived through would be weighed in front of everyone. She straightened her posture and whispered to herself, "This is for fairness. This is for justice." The hearing began with opening statements from the prosecutor. The lawyer spoke clearly, emphasizing the severity of the incident and the evidence that supported Aaliyah's claims. He explained how a young girl had been handcuffed without cause, subjected to verbal intimidation, and treated unfairly solely because of her appearance. The lawyer highlighted the video footage from the delivery driver, emphasizing that it captured the truth of what had happened. He addressed the courtroom with professionalism, ensuring that the gravity of the situation was understood by everyone present. Aaliyah listened carefully as the prosecutor spoke. Every word seemed to confirm her own experiences, validating the feelings she had struggled with since the incident. She noticed the attentive faces in the courtroom, some curious, some shocked, and some nodding in agreement. She realized that the story she had lived through was not just her own; it had the power to make people aware, to change perspectives, and to demand accountability. When it was Officer Mercer's defense lawyer's turn to speak, he attempted to portray the incident as a misunderstanding. He suggested that his client had been following standard procedure and that there had been no intention to cause harm. Aaliyah noticed that some of the statements were carefully worded to cast doubt, but she remained calm. She had prepared for this, understanding that there would be attempts to downplay the incident. Her lawyer had warned her that the defense would try to question her credibility, but she felt ready to answer honestly and confidently. Next, witnesses were called to testify. The delivery driver, who had recorded the video, took the stand first. He described how he had observed the events from a safe distance and how he had acted out of concern for Aaliyah's safety. He explained the sequence of events, confirming that Officer Mercer had used unnecessary force and that Aaliyah had been compliant throughout. His testimony was clear and precise, reinforcing the validity of the video evidence. The judge listened intently, occasionally nodding as the witness recounted the details. Following the driver, Aaliyah was called to give her testimony. She walked up to the stand, feeling the eyes of everyone in the courtroom upon her. For a moment, she felt a flash of nervousness, but she quickly remembered her mother's words and the importance of telling the truth. She took a deep breath, adjusted the microphone, and began speaking. She described the events in chronological order, starting from the moment she had entered the delivery area. She spoke about the unexpected confrontation with Officer Mercer, the handcuffs, and the fear she had felt during the ride to the station. She explained how she had tried to remain calm, how she had answered questions politely, and how she had felt the injustice of being treated unfairly. Her voice was steady, her words clear, and her emotions controlled. The courtroom remained silent as she spoke, hanging on every word. After completing her account, the defense lawyer began questioning her. He tried to suggest that she had exaggerated certain aspects of the incident or that she had misunderstood the officer's intentions. Aaliyah listened carefully to each question, considering her answers. She responded honestly, calmly explaining her perspective without anger or aggression. Her composure impressed the judge, the jury, and even some of the courtroom spectators. It became clear that her credibility was strong, and that her testimony matched the evidence perfectly. The prosecutor then called on additional witnesses, including school staff and family members, to confirm Aaliyah's character and to provide context for her actions. They described her as a respectful, responsible, and well-behaved young girl who had never exhibited behavior that could justify mistreatment. These statements reinforced the narrative that Aaliyah had been targeted unfairly and that Officer Mercer had acted outside of acceptable conduct. As the hearing progressed, Officer Mercer was given a chance to respond. He took the stand, attempting to explain his actions and provide justification for his decisions. However, under cross-examination by the prosecutor, inconsistencies in his story began to emerge. The video footage was presented again, showing the exact moments where Aaliyah had been handcuffed and how he had treated her. The contrast between his statements and the evidence was clear, and the tension in the courtroom increased. Spectators whispered softly, recognizing the disparity between what had been claimed and what had been proven. Throughout the day, Aaliyah observed the reactions of those around her. The jury appeared engaged, taking careful notes and listening attentively. Her family watched with a mix of concern and pride, silently encouraging her with their presence. Even the judge seemed to respond to the clarity of the evidence and the courage Aaliyah displayed in recounting her experience. She realized that by facing this challenging situation, she was helping to hold someone accountable and contribute to a broader understanding of fairness and justice. During breaks, Aaliyah spent time with her mother, who reminded her to stay calm and focused. They discussed small coping strategies, taking deep breaths, thinking positively, and visualizing a fair outcome. Aaliyah also spoke briefly with her lawyer, who praised her for her composure and clear communication. "You're doing everything right," he said. "Your testimony is strong, and the evidence supports your story. Keep believing in yourself." These words strengthened Aaliyah's resolve, reminding her that courage and honesty were her most important tools. By late afternoon, closing statements began. The prosecutor summarized the events, emphasizing the importance of accountability and the evidence supporting Aaliyah's testimony. The defense attempted to minimize the incident, but the weight of the evidence made it difficult for their argument to hold. Aaliyah listened silently, feeling a sense of relief mixed with anticipation. She knew that the judge and jury would carefully consider everything before making a decision, and that justice was not always immediate, but the truth had been presented clearly. As the hearing concluded, Aaliyah and her family left the courtroom. Outside, the sun was beginning to set, casting a warm glow over the city. She felt a mixture of exhaustion and pride. She had faced her fear, spoken the truth, and contributed to a process that demanded fairness. Walking beside her mother, she realized that this experience, though difficult, had strengthened her character and her understanding of justice. Over the following days, Aaliyah returned to her normal routine, but she remained aware of the ongoing legal process. The court would deliberate, and a decision would eventually be made, but she felt empowered knowing that she had done everything she could to ensure the truth was heard. Her family continued to support her, encouraging her to stay focused on school, hobbies, and daily life, while remaining patient for the final outcome. Through this experience, Aaliyah also reflected on the importance of community support and advocacy. The delivery driver's courage, the lawyer's guidance, and the public's attention had all played a role in ensuring accountability. She realized that standing up for justice was not just an individual effort, but a collective one. By being honest, brave, and composed, she had contributed to a process that could create meaningful change and awareness. As the days turned into weeks, the anticipation of the final verdict grew, but Aaliyah remained calm. She continued attending school, participating in extracurricular activities, and spending time with her family and friends. Each day, she felt a sense of accomplishment for having faced such a difficult situation with dignity and courage. She knew that whatever the outcome, she had already proven her strength, integrity, and resilience. Finally, Aaliyah understood that this experience had transformed her perspective. She had learned the value of standing up for oneself, the importance of truth, and the power of patience and composure in the face of adversity. She had faced fear, uncertainty, and unfairness, yet she had emerged stronger, more aware, and more determined to advocate for fairness and justice. The day of the verdict finally arrived, and Aaliyah felt a mixture of anticipation, anxiety, and hope. She woke up early, unable to eat much breakfast, her mind racing with thoughts about what would happen. Her mother stayed close, holding her hand and speaking softly, reminding her to stay calm and focused. "You've already done everything right, Aaliyah. Now, we wait for justice to be served," her mother said. These words were comforting, though they could not completely erase the nervousness in her heart. When they arrived at the courthouse, the atmosphere was electric. Reporters, community members, and activists had gathered outside, their faces showing interest, concern, and support. The courtroom was packed, as everyone waited for the judge to deliver the decision. Aaliyah and her family found their seats, sitting together tightly, feeling the solidarity and anticipation in the room. She looked around and noticed the supportive expressions of people who had come to witness accountability, people who believed that fairness and truth mattered. Officer Mercer entered the courtroom, looking tense and uncomfortable. His confident demeanor from previous hearings was replaced by a subtle unease. He sat silently, hands folded, eyes flicking briefly toward Aaliyah, though she did not look back. She felt a calm determination as she observed him. She had no need for anger now. She knew that the evidence, her testimony, and the truth would speak louder than any fear or intimidation. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. Papers were shuffled, the gavel tapped, and the moment had arrived. The judge began by summarizing the case, carefully recounting the events, the testimonies, and the evidence that had been presented. He spoke slowly, deliberately, ensuring that every detail was clear. He mentioned the video footage captured by the delivery driver, the consistent testimony of witnesses, and Aaliyah's calm and truthful account of the incident. Each word reinforced the seriousness of the situation and the importance of the decision that was about to be announced. Aaliyah held her mother's hand tightly, feeling a wave of nervous energy run through her. She reminded herself to breathe slowly and focus on the present moment. Her thoughts drifted briefly to the night of the incident, the fear, the confusion, the unfairness, but she replaced those memories with the knowledge that she had faced the challenge with courage. She had been honest, patient, and resilient, and now, the outcome would reflect the truth she had presented. The judge paused, letting the gravity of the moment settle in the room. He spoke about the importance of accountability, emphasizing that those in positions of authority had a duty to protect and serve with fairness, integrity, and respect. Any abuse of power, especially based on prejudice or bias, could not be tolerated. These words resonated deeply with everyone present, reinforcing the societal importance of the case. Finally, the judge announced the verdict. Officer Mercer was found guilty of using excessive force and acting with bias and misconduct. The courtroom reacted immediately. Some gasped, some whispered, and some nodded in approval. Aaliyah felt a wave of relief wash over her, mixed with a quiet sense of triumph. Justice had been served, not just for her, but for the principle of fairness and the message it sent to the community. The sentencing was announced shortly after. Officer Mercer would serve several years in prison and face permanent consequences in his professional career. The judge also ordered him to participate in bias and sensitivity training and to make a public acknowledgement of the wrongdoing. Aaliyah listened attentively as the judge outlined the sentence, feeling the satisfaction of accountability taking shape. She knew that the punishment was fair and that it reflected the seriousness of his actions. After the hearing concluded, Aaliyah and her family stepped outside. The sun was shining brightly, a symbolic contrast to the darkness of the incident that had occurred months earlier. Reporters approached, asking questions, but Aaliyah remained calm and composed. She spoke about her experience briefly, emphasizing the importance of truth, fairness, and standing up against injustice. Her words were measured, sincere, and powerful, demonstrating her growth through the ordeal. Community members and supporters approached Aaliyah and her family, expressing admiration for her courage and composure. Some shared their own stories of injustice, and others thanked her for helping to raise awareness about the abuse of power. Aaliyah realized that her actions had a ripple effect, inspiring others and showing that even in difficult circumstances, honesty and bravery could make a difference. Over the following weeks, Aaliyah reflected on the journey she had undergone. The incident had been frightening and unfair, yet it had taught her invaluable lessons. She had learned the importance of staying calm in stressful situations, the power of truth, and the significance of community support. She had also understood that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act rightly despite it. These lessons would stay with her for the rest of her life. At school, Aaliyah noticed subtle changes. Teachers and classmates treated her with new respect, recognizing her bravery and integrity. Conversations about fairness, accountability, and bias became more open, and Aaliyah found herself engaging in discussions to help others understand the importance of standing up against injustice. She realized that her personal experience had become a teaching moment, helping her peers grow in awareness and empathy. Aaliyah's family continued to support her, encouraging her to focus on her future and to pursue her dreams. They celebrated small victories together, acknowledging the resilience and maturity Aaliyah had shown. They also reflected on the broader lessons of the case, discussing how accountability, honesty, and courage were essential for creating a fair and just society. These conversations strengthened their bonds and reinforced Aaliyah's understanding of her own role in promoting positive change. Despite the resolution of the case, Aaliyah also understood that the work of fairness and justice extended beyond her personal experience. She became more aware of societal issues, the need for education on bias, and the importance of standing up for others. She volunteered in community programs, spoke at local events, and shared her story in ways that inspired constructive dialogue. Her experiences became a source of motivation, not only for herself but for those around her. Months later, Aaliyah received recognition from local organizations for her courage and advocacy. Awards and letters of appreciation acknowledged her bravery, the importance of her testimony, and her role in promoting justice and fairness. These acknowledgments were not the reason she had acted courageously, but they served as a reminder that standing up for the right thing could have a meaningful impact on the world. Through it all, Aaliyah remained humble, knowing that the attention and accolades were secondary to the real victory, justice and accountability. She continued to live her life with integrity, resilience, and compassion, embodying the lessons she had learned from her challenging experience. Her journey had been difficult, but it had strengthened her character and her understanding of fairness, empathy, and courage. In the end, Aaliyah understood that life was full of challenges, some unfair and painful, but that facing them with honesty, courage, and support could transform adversity into growth. She had turned a frightening and unjust experience into a source of learning, inspiration, and positive change. Her story served as a reminder that no matter how difficult circumstances may be, standing up for truth and justice could bring about meaningful results. Aaliyah's life continued, but the impact of the case remained. She carried the lessons she had learned into every aspect of her daily life, influencing her actions, her decisions, and her interactions with others. She remained vigilant, compassionate, and strong, determined to contribute to a world where fairness and justice were not just ideals, but realities. And so, the story of the young girl who faced injustice with courage became a story of hope, accountability, and the power of standing up for what is right. Aaliyah's experience showed that even in the face of fear and wrongdoing, truth and bravery could prevail, inspiring others and leaving a lasting impact on the community.